What's up everyone, it's a nice out here, and today I'm going to be doing a video comparing all three of the main models from Reeve knives. We have the Sebenza, the Inkosi, and the Umnumzaan. So Reeve knives is a company that is very popular in the knife world, but they're also very expensive. The base model for all these is $450, and when you get that, a lot of times people want to make the purchase that is most fitting for them when they go to buy it. I ended up getting all three, and I'd assumed that if you like the one you get, you're probably going to get a different model, but a lot of people really look at trying to get the best one for them and just be done with that. So yeah, I have done a lot of videos in the past on the Sebenza talking about like if you should do inlays or not in single or drop point. And I also compared the Sebenza to the Umnumzaan, but I recently got the Inkosi. I've had it for probably like 2 or 3 months, and so I've gotten enough use on it to be able to compare all three of them. So that's what I'm going to do today. So yeah, let's get into it. The anatomy of these knives is all very similar, all pretty much same materials used. So blade steels, they use S45VN right now. They used to use S35VN. If you're getting a 21, it's going to be in S35VN. I would suggest a 21 over the 31. Did a dedicated video on that one if you guys want. I also have a playlist on my channel that's all like the Sebenza videos if you want to check that out. I think they're switching to MagnaCut soon. It looks like it's going in that direction, but soon with Reeve knives is like 3 years. So yeah, it took them like 2 years, I think, to put in single blade on the 31. So yeah, don't expect MagnaCut anytime soon, guys, unless it's like a limited edition or something. But they all use 6AL4V bead blasted titaniums. They are all frame locks, made in the USA. All use the same pocket clip tip up. And yeah, they do have their differences, which I will go over. But what was I gonna say? Tip up pocket clip. Oh yeah, let me talk about the different configurations of these knives. So some of these knives come in, like the Sebenza, you can get it in Damascus. These two, you can't get them in Damascus regularly. You only see those in Damascus like with limited time runs, and a lot of times if they're in Damascus, they are crazy expensive on the secondary market for these, especially the Umnumzaan. But for the thumb studs, the Sebenza, the plain model comes with a single lug, while the Inkosi and the Umnumzaan are both double lugs. You can get double lug Sebenzas, just the base model doesn't. I honestly don't know why they don't do a double lug. I don't really care because I don't spidey flick my Sebenza, but you know, I'll just say that. The Umnumzaan you can only get in the drop point and the Tonto blade. Both of these you can get drop point in Singo and Tonto. And the Sebenza and the Inkosi you can both get with inlays. The Umnumzaan you cannot. So the Inkosi and the Sebenza have more configuration options than the Umnumzaan. I think all of the base models of these are really good, and I really like all of them. I think that if you want to get inlays, you can, but is it really worth the extra $100? I wouldn't say it is. If you, like, let's say the Sebenza is too thin for you, the inlays make it thicker. So if it's worth it, I say go for it. But really, you're not missing out by just getting the base model. It's really good by itself. Let's talk about the looks. So all of these knives I think are really good looking knives. The Umnumzaan's probably my favorite looking out of all these. I really like this double harpoon blade with this fraggish pattern on the handle. The Inkosi, probably my least favorite looking if I had to rank these, which just doesn't really matter. Just the handle with these 2 grooves, it's not as good. The Tonto blade also doesn't look that good in my opinion, but I do think it is cool, like this compound grind right here. Sebenza, very simple looking knife. All these knives, I really like the dark bead blast with the mirrored-ish stonewash blade. I think that they're all great looking knives. Now let's talk about the blade, how these things compare to each other. So even though they're all the same steel, or pretty much all the same steel, they have their differences. So one of them is in the grind. The grind on the Sebenza and the Umnumzaan are they use a smaller wheel, like contact wheel, when they do the hollow grind, I think on like the CNC machine or whatever that they use. And what that does is it makes a deeper hollow grind, making it thinner throughout. The Umnumzaan does it as well. While the Inkosi, they use like a larger contact wheel, and so it's not as deep of a hollow grind. It is still slightly hollow, but this is more similar to a flat grind. So this is going to have more thickness at the blade, which would ideally be stronger for hard use, and these are probably going to cut better since they are thinner. Now, one thing I want to say is the Inkosi still performs fine in everyday carry tasks, and these still perform fine in hard use tasks. I don't think that there's going to be something that you're using your knife for where the Sebenza blade would break, but the Inkosi wouldn't. Maybe if you're like stabbing into a piece of wood and then twisting like that or something. But really, I think all these blades are strong enough to last in hard use and thin enough to last in an EDC setting, which is mainly what I use my knives for. Now let's talk about the blade stock thickness. So the Inkosi and the Umnumzaan both have, I think, around the same stock. If you look at the jimping here, the crown spine on the Inkosi kind of gives the illusion that it is thinner, but here is that. And then, let me try and do all three of these. Here's the Sebenza. So Sebenza is the thinnest at the stock and the thinnest, and has that deep hollow grind. So the Sebenza is it's the thinnest overall blade, therefore making it cut the best. I'll measure thickness behind the edge on these knives. My calipers, the batteries are almost dead, so it's kind of hard to see. But the Sebenza, we're looking at like 19 thousandths behind the edge. Keep in mind I have all sharpened these. They should be all around the same angle, probably around that 17-ish degree mark. The Umnumzaan 20 thousandths, 19, or yeah. I'll just call it 20 thousandths because that's what it was, and that's what I measured in the past. And then the Inkosi is about 22 thousandths behind the edge. So the Inkosi is slightly thicker overall on the blade than all three of these. So if I had to say, for blade wise, hard use, the Inkosi probably wins. EDC, the Sebenza probably wins, and all around, the Umnumzaan wins. They're all good and well performing blades, though. One thing I want to touch on that the Umnumzaan kind of loses at is the sharpening choil. So the Sebenza and the Inkosi both have a really good sharpening choil right here. You're going to be able to sharpen this knife a lot and never get a smile. The Umnumzaan, I've sharpened this probably maybe 2 or 3 times, and it's already kind of forming, that's not focusing, it's already kind of forming a smile up here, which is not ideal. It's not that big of a sharpening choil. And I mean, the plunge grind is all the way back here, and then this one, the plunge grind ends like right here, and the edge starts just barely after it. So that is points more for the Sebenza and the Inkosi. Now let's talk about let's talk about locking mechanisms. So all frame locks, but the Inkosi and this Umnumzaan are similar, that they use a ceramic ball as the lock interface. I don't know if you can see that little ceramic ball in there. So that is coming in contact with the tang of the blade. And if you look here, you see where that is hitting it. And the Sebenza 31 also uses this mechanism. I'm comparing my 21. I've had a 31, but I like the 21 more. And so what the 21 uses, it has no interface. It is just carburized on the lock face. So it's basically, I think, or carbonized, I don't know, always mix them up. But it just heated up, and so it's not soft titanium on a hard metal. It's hardened titanium on the blade. And so yeah, I prefer this locking mechanism the best. I just like the actual frame on here. They both work. They both are fine. But if I had to choose one, it would be the Sebenza. And I guess I kind of want to touch on just the internals of these knives. So one thing that the Sebenza is different from both of these is that it has a pivot bushing system. And what that does is it doesn't allow this pivot screw to be tightened any further than one point. And so when you put it back together, you tighten this whole thing up, and then it should drop, or not really drop shut, but like have no blade play, and then have a good working action on here. With these, you pretty much, when you take them apart, just center it up and it's usually good. Check for blade play and then adjust from there. But it does not use a bushing pivot, so you have to use a Loctite on these. I've had to use Loctite on my Sebenzas too. Some people say Chris Reeve knives don't need Loctite, but I've needed them for every single one that I've had. And this pivot is, if I had to choose one that I prefer, I'd say the bushing, just because I like it more. It's simpler and easier to disassemble, even though it does add a part. But these still work fine. These are bigger pivots, which I think it kind of looks cooler, a bigger pivot on a knife. But it doesn't really give that much advantage. Maybe it's slightly stronger, but I don't think it's going to come down to that very much. But yeah, the bushing pivot on the Sebenza, I really like that about it. Comparing the stop pins, I don't know the sizes on these stop pins, but I think they're all thick stop pins. The Umnumzaan uses these external studs, or the studs are used as an external stop pin, which is my favorite way of a stop pin, because it's less parts. Notice there is no stop pin on here, so there's literally 2 screws, which is really cool. Just super simple construction, but it is technically the strongest in a prying application because this is closer to the part of the blade that there is the stress at, and so there is less of a risk of the internals being hurt from prying with your knife, because the pressure will go to the stop pin, and the stop pin's behind the pivot and the washers on here, which is, yeah, just better, I guess, leverage is why. But honestly, I think you can pry with the Inkosi and the Sebenza. Would I suggest it? No, but they both have thick stocks. They both have a really good build quality, and that big stop pin is going to help a lot. So, any more on construction? I guess I could talk about washers. I honestly don't remember. I know the Inkosi uses 2 really big, thin washers. The Sebenza uses a larger washer on this side and then a smaller one on here. And then the Umnumzaan, I'm thinking it uses 2 big washers, but I honestly don't know. I guess I'll just touch on these 2. I prefer the bigger washers, but honestly, it's something that has never come up in my use. So I'm really nitpicking on these knives because they're all super similar, just their differences are extremely small. So when I talk about them, they don't really matter that much in the end, I guess. Now let's move on to ergonomics of these knives. So the ergonomics on all of these are pretty good. If I had to rank them, it would go Sebenza, Inkosi, Umnumzaan last. So the reason the Umnumzaan is last, it's pretty comfortable for me. But if I had any complaints, the pocket clip is kind of close to the place where your fingers are, I guess the end of the handle. And that isn't as comfortable as if it was closer back and more in the meat of your hand. This is closer to your finger, so sometimes that was a hot spot in use. Right here, this area can get kind of pinchy, especially if your lockup is later. I haven't experienced that much, but it's just not that comfortable to put my finger in. And this lock, like, I feel like this finger groove is pretty small, and I already don't have very big fingers. So if you do have girthier fingers, this probably isn't going to be as comfortable, because part of your finger is going to be resting on this bump right here. But I mean, they couldn't have it too far back, or else it would be really hard to disengage the lock, because you'd be kind of going from all the way back here. So, and also one thing the Umnumzaan does really good is this flat back here. That's really nice against your hand. The pressure is evenly distributed throughout your hand, which makes hard use and powerful cuts really nice. With the Inkosi, the reason it's second is just because it restricts your grip more than the Sebenza with these finger grooves here. But my fingers fit really good in here. It's really comfortable, and I really like it. The jimping's also good too. That's one good thing I want to say about Chris Reeve knives. They never use too much jimping. It's just this little bit on the back right here, and these are stonewash blades already, so they really aren't that sharp. Sebenza is the best because, one, the inlaid Sebenza is 100% the best when it comes to ergonomics, but it has this flat, mostly flat spine back here, and then also flat here, just this small groove, so you can grip it like this really any way that you want to. The Inkosi is pretty good. All these knives are pretty good with that, but this one is by far the best. I mean, it's pretty much just as comfortable in this grip as it is in this one. So yeah, the Sebenza is great in ergonomics. I would say that if I'm comparing a non-inlaid Sebenza to these two, because I had a large non-inlaid 31, but I would probably say it's definitely behind the Inkosi if it is not inlaid, but it's probably maybe tied with the Umnumzaan or ahead of the Umnumzaan. But yeah, inlaid Sebenza is better ergonomics than all of these. But the Inkosi, if we're talking non-inlaid, the Inkosi is better in my opinion, just because the non-inlaid Sebenza is a little bit thin in the hand. Now let's talk about the carry of these knives. So I won't touch on this much, but they all carry good. They all have a good pocket clip. It's probably my favorite clip. Actually, nah, take that back. It's not my favorite clip, but I do like the 2 points of retention. It does have this bill here, which it technically could get caught on stuff. I've never had the problem, and I've carried these a lot. But they all carry good. They're all full-size titanium frame locks with like no milling done on the inside. So they are all pretty heavy. You're probably not going to carry them in like running shorts or something. But the Inkosi, I'd probably say this one carries the best, just because the way the pocket clip cants like that to the left a little bit, it hugs your pants more. I don't know, which both of these aren't a problem, but technically this one is the best to carry. It might be heavier though, so maybe that is a downside too, but carry, they're pretty much all even. And yeah, let's talk about the action. So the action actually is significantly different on all these three knives. The best one is probably the Inkosi. This flicks out really good. The thumb stud is in a good spot. Mine doesn't drop really. Oh, actually it kind of does. But keep in mind with these knives, they're not going to be like a ZT or a Wii knife flipper frame lock or a Riyadh or something that's going to drop shut and be super fun to play with. These aren't really knives that are fun to play with, but that's not really what I look for when buying a knife, so it doesn't bother me. But the Inkosi flicks out really good. The Sebenza, it flicks out too. It slow rolls really good. It's just a lighter detent on it. I think this ceramic ball detent that also works as the locking mechanism just maybe is a little bit stronger than how it is on the regular, with a regular detent ball on the Sebenza. But this action still is good. Like, see, with that, I'm not as consistent with flicking it out. And if I just grabbed it and flicked it like that, it wouldn't fully open. But this one is probably my smoothest knife, or smoothest Chris Reeve knife. It's really smooth. But and then there's the Umnumzaan. So the Umnumzaan is pretty good on the action. It just takes a little bit getting used to. A lot of times with your thumb stud knives, you flick them more that way, but this one, because it is up against the handle scale, because it serves as a stop pin in the closed position as well, you have to flick it more up, and when you do that, it flicks out really good. As I messed that one up, but the action is good once you learn how to do it. The lock bar is a little bit harder to close. I use like the fat of my thumb for this lock bar, like right here. Some people go like that, but that kind of hurts my thumb. I guess I'm just being a baby though, but for the action, the Inkosi wins if that means something to you. Don't look for a good or a fun action on any of these, and when you get it, it's probably going to take some breaking in and you're probably going to be like, oh man, my thumb hurts if you just keep flipping this thing over and over. Now on to the value of these three knives. They're all the same price, so value would just be me saying which one is my favorite. But I guess I'll just go ahead and go to that. So my favorite one is the Sebenza. If you guys know, this is my favorite knife. I really like it. I think it is the best for everyday carry, and that's what I mainly use these knives for. The Umnumzaan, this is a cool knife. I feel like when I compare these, like on paper, the Umnumzaan keeps getting like last, in ergonomics and action, stuff like that, and blade, it's kind of just in the middle. And it is a great knife. I really like the Umnumzaan. It's up there it's neck and neck with the Sebenza. And so the Umnumzaan's actually second on my list, even though the Inkosi probably won more categories when I went through this than the Umnumzaan did. The Umnumzaan's second just because I like it more. It is better for EDC in my opinion than the Inkosi, and it's just a cool knife, man. Like, look at that. That is just a cool knife. I really like this blade on here, and it's just a great knife. I said that like 4 times. But then we got the Inkosi. I really like the Inkosi, my newest one. It's just this blade is designed for more of a hard use fashion. It still works in EDC. It just doesn't work as good as these two. And at the end of the day, what it comes down for me is cutting performance and ergonomics. And since they all have good ergonomics, I like the Inkosi last just because the cutting performance is worse than these. Now, if you're fine, like the Inkosi will still work fine for EDC. It's not gonna cut like it's gonna cut a little bit worse than a Spyderco, just from my uses with it, but it still works fine. I would just have to go Sebenza, Umnumzaan, Inkosi for my list. That's all I got today. I think that's gonna be it. Oh, and Sebenza 21 first. 31, that's a whole different video. I don't even have one, so I can't really do it. But just from memory, 31 would probably be last. Yeah, probably. Maybe in front of the, I don't know. Yeah, 31 would probably be last. That just shows how close these knives are, because the difference between the 21 and the 31 is very little. But yeah, 21's my favorite. I'd suggest looking for one on the secondary market. Chris Reeve knives are all hard to get right now. They're on like a 2-year back order if you order through their website. So the secondary market is the way to go. Join the Facebook group, the Buy, Sell, and Trade, and you'll see some pretty good stuff there, or at least I have. But that's all I got today. Thank you guys for watching. If you got any questions, leave them in the comments. If you just want to say something random, leave it in the comments. I'm happy for anything, but I'll see you guys in the next one.